Women, what are the subtle kinds of low-grade sexual harassment you face on a constant basis? Went to buy a car with my boyfriend and the salesman started explaining something to me. Before pausing and saying, "Oh, so never mind. Ask your fella, he will be able to explain it to you." I was like, I'm buying the car and he doesn't even drive. I can't imagine just randomly putting my hands on a female co-worker or showing them inappropriate pics on my phone. I don't get how these people don't respect boundaries. It just doesn't compute with me while reading these comments in this thread. Random guys thinking we like literally getting swept off our feet. Last time it happened, I was in a bar watching my husband's band play and some dipshit tried to pick me up from behind and carry me onto the dance floor. Luckily I'm sturdier than I look, so he didn't get very far. But I still had to tell him I didn't want to dance with him multiple times. He decided I was scared to, even though I said repeatedly I don't want to. I'm a hand therapist. I have to show people how to massage their scars effectively after their surgery because otherwise they can become stuck to the bone tendon underneath. To do this I have to put cream on the scar and then demonstrate the right pressure to put on while they massage it. I've lost count of the amount of times a man has tried to hold my hand back. Or make some lewd comment about how I can massage elsewhere if I like. Just no. Yuck. Actually, we have a nurse to handle those requests. His name is Bruno. Would you like me to get him? When I was in university, one of my housemates' younger sister came for the weekend. 14-year-old but dressed mature and wore a lot of makeup. We were walking in town and a group of guys in their mid-late 30s were casually shouting that they wanted to duck her and the ways they'd do it. I remember saying openly that it was disgusting and how long she was and looked. And she said she was completely used to it. And my friends who work in nightclubs told me how normal it was for drunk guys at the end of the night to wait outside the club for them to finish. So most of the girls got a ride home with the bouncers just in case. Totally normal. And one friend told me she had to bar a regular from coming in when she realized he was wanking on the other side of the bar. She was talking to him. Then turned to look at the CCTV that was under the bar and saw him going at it. But she said it wasn't the first time that had happened. When I worked in an office, there were a lot of sales reps who didn't care that I didn't want to be touched because they were huggers. Men older than my parents would shake hands with the other people in my department but insist I stand up for a hug. When I brought it up to my boss, I was told they were old school salesmen and to just laugh it off. Once I was trying to do my job as a food inspector at the Emirates Stadium. I was with my male colleague but we stood out like sore thumbs in our white coats and hat. All the men just stopped and stared as I walked through the food court and shouted at me all the ways they would like to duck me, and worse. I felt ashamed and humiliated. It was the single worst thing I have ever experienced. It wasn't a couple of men either. It was literally hundreds of drunk men who were all acting like they'd never seen a woman before. I cried the whole way home on the train. I reported it to my female manager a few days later and she essentially told me to get over it. I've refused to go back since. Other than that, I get a lot of men who think it's appropriate to physically take my clipboard from my hands mid-inspection and refuse to give it back until I give them my number. Drives me nuts. I get really PSSY these days when it happens and tell them I'll prosecute them for obstruction. Which usually stops them quick. Age 16/17, I worked in a DIY store. I had so many men ask how much it had cost to buy me. Can they take me home with their new bag of cement? And even had one guy ask me what I was doing later that evening and can he take me for dinner. Sometimes they'd be quiet when I'd reply with I'm 16. Other times they'd just continue. Government office. If I, 22F, wear anything besides a turtleneck, and even that doesn't always do the trick. My much older boss will blatantly stare at my breasts during every conversation. He also calls me cute. Comments on my outfits, hair, and general appearance. At least weekly. It makes me uncomfortable. But HR won't do anything and I can't afford to lose this job and the benefits. The laser eyes digging into my chest is about the lowest grade I've gotten. Highest grade harassment was getting catcalled by a grown adult as an 11-year-old. Once I was in the store with my 5-year-old daughter who was carrying a feather duster we were buying. And an old man leered at her and said she needed a French maid's outfit. What the duck? To a 5-year-old? How deranged was he? Certainly not subtle. But I used to work in a legal clinic doing public benefits, social security, food stamps, etc. I was the only lawyer who worked in this area and supervised a couple of non-lawyer college grads who rotated through every year. For context, I'm also young and Asian, so I look even younger than I am. And I'm sure that didn't help. If I had $1 for every time a client asked me if they could get a second opinion from a male attorney, I could have kept doing public interest law. Some clients refused to meet with me and demanded to speak to a male staff member. No male attorneys on staff sometimes. Which would often lead to them meeting with one of my supervisees, fresh college grads with no legal experience except what I taught them. They would helpfully tell the client that they couldn't give legal advice and should probably do what I told them to do in the first place. Fun stuff. My best friend used to work at the depot of home. And multiple times a shift a male customer comments on her ability to lift heavy items and say shit like a pretty little thing like you shouldn't be working so hard. If she has to climb a ladder to get something. She's had multiple men grab her hips to help steady her. Almost every time she worked she would get comments or be touched by older men. She absolutely hated it. From the time my daughter was about 13 and looked her age, men in other cars would just openly gawp at her when we were waiting at lights or in traffic. Like, dude, you aren't invisible, you know. A couple examples. 1. The doofus from Home Depot delivering my refrigerator. Looking at the space it's supposed to fit in. And saying it won't fit. He looks me up and down as I mention that I did measure. He then asked if my husband was home. Since I obviously didn't get it, I replied that I was not married. Which seemed to explain everything to him. Ended with him being lit on fire. Oh wait, no, I was just thinking that. It ended with me saying never mind. If you can't figure it out I'll do it myself, which crushed his ego enough that he did. In fact, put the refrigerator where it belonged. And yes, it did ducking fit. Because I measured. 2. The mechanic talking to you like you're too dumb to pour a glass of juice, much less drive a car. Much less understand that your brakes should not be bad after 20,000 miles. Nor should your shocks. They try to con women for unnecessary repairs all the time. The casual touching. Putting a hand on my shoulder or lower back or leg. Or getting uncomfortably close to me. And if you say anything everyone just wonders what my problem is. There's also men who will do it so openly knowing no one will do anything about it. At a work event one particular guy kept following me and putting his hand up my address. The last thing I would say is that I am considered at least mildly attractive. This leads to the constant gossip and jokes from the men in the office trying to duck me. Having a conversation only for them to end it by getting really close and saying you're very pretty. Very beautiful. Every guy should want you, it doesn't sound bad. But they say it in this whisper deep tone and get uncomfortably close. For me it always happened after a short conversation about something normal, like asking directions. Once it occurred after this older man sitting a table away asked for help figuring out how to fix his phone. I told him I didn't know, but there was a phone repair place close by. He kept asking. Then asked where I went to school and what I did. It didn't seem too weird because I'd seen him at this coffee shop before. But I was always with my dad. This time I was alone. I got up to leave and he started whispering about how pretty I was. And every step I took to move away, he inched closer. Someone came up to talk to him. Thank God, but I refused to go back for several weeks after. It's bad enough coming from someone you just met. It's worse coming from a much older guy that you just met. Not getting taken seriously in the workplace. Like, your feedback is marginalized. Not having your pain taken seriously by male doctors. Being called honey or babe by men who are total ducking strangers. I'm never taken seriously. I'm short. Have a cute looking pixie face. To a lot of men. That means I'm an idiot. None of my male colleagues are ever asked why they are at the STEM conferences like I am. Yes. I do know what the lecture is about. Yes. I do know where I am. Yes. I know how difficult this particular problem is. It's having to prove yourself. Every single day all the time. A man makes a mistake and it's a mistake. Women make one and that's our standard. We're judged on our worst. And presumed to be ignorant all the time. The entire experience of playing a multiplayer game online. Corporate office. Always asked to take notes minutes to meetings when I am the only female attending. I'm a manager just like everyone else. Not your admin. Stopping by my desk, open floor plan, to look down my shirt rather than look at my face when speaking. I'm large chested. Guys making comments on other women's ass chest etc. Loud enough to be overheard often in the few minutes before meetings start. Showing me inappropriate lewd pics from their phone. Being repeatedly propositioned at work. Getting cornered by the same creep at any all work functions. Then having the mean girls of the office be jealous I'm getting attention. Okay. Not all low grade. I got out of there and yes there was a lawsuit. I am an engineer so I'm very used to being in a male dominated workforce. As others have mentioned. The casual touching is one that really gets me. Another is the constant unwanted random people who see a woman in the office and feel the need to talk to her. It is worse if you sit on an aisle. Telling them you're busy doesn't work. They just keep on talking. And I don't know if this counts as sexual harassment but having my work questioned until a male engineer says it is okay will forever PSS me off. I had a co-worker randomly kiss me on New Year's. It wasn't midnight, not that it really matters, and my boyfriend was right next to me. It was very weird and unsettling. Out of pure reaction I slapped him. Still to this day I have no idea why he did it. He quit soon after. Every job I have ever had that claims to operate in a family dynamic has without fail included unwanted touches, hugs, shoulder arm touches, and typical locker room talk. If you are a woman, it's pretty common to be touched by a male coworker. Not many examples I can think of in 15 years of various corporate experiences where the boss hugged and touched the male staff as much as they do the women. And if I had a nickel for every time I heard a male co-worker either talk about their own sex life or sexualize someone else, I wouldn't need a damn job. IDK if this is sexual harassment. More like low-key misogyny but I've had several customers, higher-ups at big-name corporate companies it's not just an average retail job, only accept what I tell them as truth until a man confirms it. This man doesn't even need to be a higher level supervisor just a male voice over the phone. Annoying as all hell. Are you a woman? Yes. Dave. Can you verify? Touch that is passed off as excusable friendly touch. For example, putting your hand on a woman's lower back to get around her. It doesn't seem like much. But would you do that to the man? Probably not. Just don't touch people without their consent. More misogyny but when solar water filter salesmen come to the house asking to speak to my husband. It aggravates me. What? I won't understand water or solar talk? WTF. I get a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons who always ask for my husband. Like, are you not trying to save my soul too? It seems so weird and like, totally misses the point of their mission. I work in the oil industry which is very male dominated. Men in general think they can touch you leading you through a door by the small of your back. Touching your arm while they're speaking to you. Trying to fix your collar or hair if it's out of place. Closely leaning over your shoulder looking at your work. Is it a pat on the ass? No. Though I've experienced that too. But it's yet nonetheless. The kicker is that if you call them on it, you'll treat it as unreasonable because it's not a pat on the ass. I know one where men block the door to talk to women. At my old job, restaurant, the truck guys who dropped off our bread etc would always ask my male co-workers where to put stuff. Even if I was the shift lead at the moment. I should point out that they knew who I was and that I had been working there a while since we'd see each other every drop off. I pointed this out to my guy co-worker friend, who shrugged it off. Then, about a month later, he asks me, don't you think it's weird the truck people always ignore you and come to me? As if it was a new revelation. I just rolled my eyes. Went to sell a car. It had blown a head gasket but I replaced it with a new kit. I had a machine shop grind the old head down. But they returned the block to me without the cams on. I could never figure out how to realign them. Basically was a junk car to me except the cams needed realigning. Anyways, I post on FB Market for 1k. It has 1,000,001 offers. I start showing to people. Finally someone, who understands cars, officially asks to buy. I sell for over asking price. But one message I got was from a random man. Do people really spend $1,000 on a junk car? I replied. If you aren't interested, please don't reply. It isn't junk. I just don't know how to realign cams. His reply? It had better come with a blowjob for that price. I went to respond and tell him how degrading and disgusting he is. He blocked me immediately after he sent that message. Some men are just trash. Not sexual harassment. Just sexism. I am a POC female doctor. And I often have medical students with me. Sometimes when the medical student is a white male, the patient looks to the student for confirmation of what I'm saying. It's unconscious probably. But it's like they want him to nod and agree with what I'm saying. I want to yell, this is my first year med student. He knows nothing at this point in his career. Stop looking at him. Well, I for one am quite fed up with general kindness being seen as an invitation to flirt with me. So far at my job, a cook that has given me free lunches decided it would be appropriate to hug me and not let me go and kissing my cheek. Another man who stares at me on my break wants to know when I'll let my hair down for him. And my boss got my phone number and tried asking me out to dinner twice. These are all adult men with wives and children. I'm ducking 18 and the youngest employee there. I am not nice to you because I'm interested. I'm simply acting appropriately in the workplace. I'm a guy with long hair and I had my mask and coat on the other day and the guy at the deli in the grocery store said, have you been helped, beautiful lady? Not the worst from everything else I've heard here. But bad enough to severely PSS me off. I hate not being able to just go for a run or do any outdoor public physical activity and being able to enjoy it and be completely left alone. I have gotten over the shock of occasionally getting honked at or yelled at while running. Not that it matters, but this happens regardless of what I'm wearing and I've had to deal with it since I was a young teen. But recently I've also had a group of 10 high school boys take up the entire sidewalk. Then try to block me and jump out into the road while I'm passing them. I nearly got hit by a car trying to avoid these guys. The oncoming car was actually the only reason they got out of the road and let me pass. Even though I live in a relatively safe neighborhood. And they were probably just bored high schoolers. It's still so messed up that people will just decide to humiliate and mess with women in public. Simply for their own entertainment. Being forcibly hugged. Some jackass in high school would forcibly hug and squeeze me tightly and not listen when I told him to stop. He also would sneak up behind me in the hallway between classes and grab my waist or pat my head or ruffle up my hair. He wouldn't listen when I told him it wasn't cool. When I was 15, I was approached at a public pool by an old man who repeatedly asked me to come to his house to eat pot roast with him. I repeatedly refused and he just kept asking why not. I'm a nice guy. Come eat pot roast at my house with me. Even after telling him my age, he'd just be like, so? I'm not like that. He finally gave up and went to approach even younger looking girls. This is less subtle. But during before sex, I'd either said no or stopped being into it. And the guy would pressure me to consent or just keep going after I said I wanted to stop. It took over a year with my current BF to stop feeling like I had to say yes to everything, even non-SZOL stuff. Men telling me to smile so they feel good. I usually demand they say something funny. They always falter. I refuse to wear shorts in public because I hate getting any attention. This is not true for all women, but is for many women. But going into a hardware store, knowing exactly what you need, where it is, and what it's used for, and having some guy, doesn't matter if it's an employee or not, start trying to tell you something different and usually wrong about what you're buying. Also, automotive stores like AutoZone and the like. I work on my own vehicles. I love it. And it helps a lot for emergency parking lot repairs if you know how to do it. Saves money on labor and towing. I go in knowing what part I'm after, and some guy almost always follows me out asking if they can help me install it. If my S.O. is helping me, I do all the repairs on his car as well, lol. Or what have you. I've taken to carrying a certain protective item openly instead of concealing it, and they typically leave me alone. I know quarantine has been lonely for everyone, but the amount of former guy friends assuming I will now date them has been disappointing. Last week some of my old friend group had a small socially distanced gathering at a park, first time I'd seen most of them in a year. Afterward, one followed me back to my car and forcibly made out with me. Like, come on dude. I've had one friend accept a turn down for a date gracefully, and I really appreciated that. But at the same time the ask out made me anxious because that's so not the norm. Talking about overtly SZOL things aloud. At work. In the next cubicle over. Not to me, but loud enough for the whole office to hear. They could go anywhere else but choose the empty cubicle next to the only woman in the office. And it is on purpose to make me feel uncomfortable. The goal is to try to get me to report it so it gives me a reputation as a tattletale to management. This is not assumption. This has been stated. Bro. You kid has a set of cannons on her. Every guy my mum dated after my dad died. 14 years old. Thanks precocious puberty. Also, can I request what panties you wear? Comma. During a massage at a 4-star sports club. While riding my bike. Okay. I'll just follow you home then. Men acting schooled when I'm competent. I'm a young lady that teaches elementary music. I'm literally in a female domino age building with maybe 2 men. But every time I have a good idea or I'm problem solving classroom management, they act shocked when it's uninformed.